Greetings, friends. Welcome on this eve of Rudolf Steiner's birthday. Let's light him a little birthday candle, shall we? Yeah, it would have been, 161 years old. So we're going to be talking about this amazing human being's biography today, just giving a little outline. But I'm wondering if somebody's feeling brave enough to read our verse for today.
I would.
Mary?
Yeah. Today, I'll mention today is my birthday also, so that's why.
Oh,
Happy
wonderful
birthday.
today.
Perfect. What's the birthday verse then for this year?
Yeah. So you want me to start now?
Yes, please.
Okay. My power of thought grows firm, united with the spirit's birth. It lifts the senses' dull attractions to bright lit clarity. When soul abundance desires union with the world's becoming, must senses revelation receive the light of thinking.
Wonderful. Yeah. So again, we have our work cut out for us, our soul work. And happy birthday to you, Mary.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're putting into the chat here. Nancy has started putting in a couple of her famous Rudolf Steiner quotes, and you're invited to do that as well. I put the link to the Padlet. Please avail yourselves of this amazing resource. There's all kinds of stuff. Everything we've done has been recorded and put there, and you're welcome to add anything you like, pictures, your thoughts, something, something that you did with one of your projects that Nancy's brought us, or anything. So let's continue to make that a group endeavor. So yeah, this amazing birthday, and it's kind of a controversy actually as far as the date is concerned, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, so the 25th of February in 1861, Rudolf Joseph Lorenz Steiner was born in a small village on the Austria-Hungary border, which is now northern Croatia. I think the next slide has a map on it. But yeah, so it's interesting to think about the Slavic environment. It was not a German-speaking. He thought that this was really essential for his life's work. But yeah, before I get into the village thing, it's so exciting to me. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I put this up here because I wanted to just give okay, who is this human being? Most people think, oh, he was a philosopher. Yeah, we get that. He definitely studied a lot of philosophy and gave us this new philosophy called Anthroposophy, right? The wisdom of the human being. But this came from a Rosicrucian impulse, which is a sort of a cosmic or esoteric Christian impulse. And he was a scientist. He was a researcher, an amazing teacher and mentor. And he gave individual lessons to children and to his colleagues in school. So he was an educator to all of us. He still is. And he founded and was the leader of a few different esoteric schools. And of course, at the Christmas conference, after the Christmas conference, he founded the School of Spiritual Science. But the interesting thing about this modern version of Rosicrucianism, this Anthroposophy, is that it really brings together art, science, and spirituality. So yeah, he was an artist. He was an architect, a playwright, painter, sculptor, right? He did so much, created this new art of eurythmy. And of course, we heard that beautiful verse for the calendar of the soul. So we have many of those to work with still. So yeah, I think of him as a Rosicrucian Christian mystic and a true initiate. So yeah, back to this village. It's located on the so-called Mur Island, which is between Mur and the Drava rivers. So Steiner called this the two rivers land, where he walked every day for 7 years to school. And I think it was like a 3-hour journey, both, there and back. So that's kind of interesting. What's also interesting, and so you can see it sort of on the left-hand side, in the middle there between the two rivers is where he was born. And he mentions this place in his Holy Nights lectures. People who were part of the Epic of Gilgamesh this year heard from his lectures on the history in the light of Anthroposophy at the Christmas conference. He gave this connection with Gilgamesh, who on his journey to find immortality made his way through this very territory when seeking the Atlantean temple where the Noah figure was said to dwell. So interesting, right? The sacred place that lives on all these different, it's like this overlay of past, present, and future, right? So he was the firstborn child of Johann Steiner and his wife, Franziske. And they met when they were both working on this large estate of this count. And Johann was the huntsman of this estate. And Franziske was a seamstress. They met, they fell in love. And, in those days you had to ask to be allowed to marry, and he was not given permission. So they ran away, they left the estate. And then Johann became a railway telegrapher. Very interesting. So Rudy was born at home, and there was some mistake by the midwife who thought that he was born, that he wasn't alive when he came forth, like he wasn't breathing properly. So she kind of ran off without really just kind of telling them, like she didn't think he was going to make it. And they were so worried that they decided to get him baptized as soon as possible. So 2 days later, on the 27th of February, Rudolf Steiner was baptized because they thought he wasn't going to make it. He did, but as we know, but the 27th of February is commonly considered to be his birthday, since that was mistakenly put on his birth certificate. So that's kind of an interesting little factoid. But when he was 1.5, his father was transferred and took up a position as a station master on a railway line that was one of the most advanced of all the railway stations of that day. So it really points up that Steiner was raised at the forefront of modern technology. Interesting, right? And it was also in this time that his sister and brother were born. I don't know if you can see the little picture there. If you move our pictures, you can see that's Steiner on the right, the older one. Look at that face. And that's his little sister. So when Steiner was 8, his father was transferred to this place in Lower Austria, Hungary. It was still part of Hungary at that time. And the family lived a kind of an isolated life because they were very troubled by the fact that Gustav, Steiner's younger little brother, turned out to be hearing impaired. He was unable to speak and had a lot of really profound learning disabilities. So it's really interesting to think that perhaps Gustav made a karmic sacrifice to bring in awareness that developed into an impulse for the Camp Hill movement later on. And the young Rudolf Steiner, you could just picture him in these beautiful, this beautiful country, going on these long nature walks. And in this trail in the mountains, he would often meet the monks from a nearby monastery, which particularly fascinated him. You know, in his autobiography, he says that he himself would have become a monk if other karmic factors hadn't intervened. That's interesting to think about. So here we see this a contrast of his deep experience in nature, and because of his father's job, the family lived at the railway house, right? So they're directly in front of the train tracks. Interesting, between these two worlds. And then in 1867, Steiner goes to the local school where, and I don't know this full story, but he says in his autobiography that he caused a, quote, disturbance, which he doesn't say what it was exactly. And so he gets expelled. You know, I guess he was like questioning the teacher. And so he got expelled. And then after that, he was homeschooled, which is interesting because he really did not learn to read until he was 7. So that's really very much along with the Waldorf pedagogy, not to rush that kind of thing. And that Steiner talks a lot about how that's important for a young human being so that they don't get pressed into them too quickly, all the facts and figures that keep them from accessing the spiritual qualities that they came in with. And of course, you know, Steiner had a lot of very early clairvoyant experiences, which, you know, you don't know. It caused him a lot of confusion. And, you know, his simple parents discouraged, any talk of it. And he described a few of these incidences in his autobiography. And the one I think we've all heard this story where he's sitting in the train station in the waiting room. He used to sort of hang out there and draw and do his schoolwork because his father was teaching him a lot. And while he's there, he was by himself. He sees a woman come out of the wood stove, like a figure of a woman, who asks him to help her in the future. Now, it turns out that this woman is his aunt who had committed suicide. And when he tells his parents, who had no idea that she had died, they call him, and this is the quote from the autobiography, a stupid boy. You can imagine after that, he never really mentioned these things again to his parents. And so Steiner's father moved a bit with his work. He was transferred again. And then Rudolf enrolls in the Realschule. So he's assigned what they call, what we would call extra lessons, because his work is, and this is his quote, unorthodox. And yet he's so smart that he actually starts tutoring his classmates to earn a couple dollars. So when he's 16, he starts to study Kant and other philosophers on his own. And in 1879, he goes to the Polytech in Vienna. So this is another sort of step for him. And this is where he meets Karl Julius Schroer. This is his German literature professor, who he develops a deep connection with. And he talks about him quite a lot in his autobiography and in his karmic relationships lectures. So sure, he can't meet the task of editing the scientific works of Goethe. So he recommends Steiner for the job. So Steiner goes on to publish various writings of Goethe. It was a real foundation for him. And around that time, he's also becomes tutor to the Specht family, where he finally finds a friend that he can talk to in Pauline, the mother. So they're actually able to have some more esoteric, he's able to reveal his mind to her a little bit, and she doesn't scorn him. She's interested. And one of her boys that he has been hired to tutor is considered, quote, backward. He had a lot of learning disabilities. He had encephalitis or some physical thing as well. But because of his teachings from Steiner, he goes on actually to become a doctor. That's a great story. I see people nodding their heads like, yeah, we know, this is so great, right? We're sharing this. So yeah, around this time, Steiner starts engaging in the cafe life. Now this is where he really starts to get social. And he meets people like this poet, Marie Eugene Delagrazie, and she holds these amazing salons where he's introduced some, really interesting, influential folks, at the cutting edge of culture and philosophy. And at that time, he wasn't saying so much. He was really just kind of taking a lot of things in. And he's also promoted to become the director of the Goethe Archive. And it's at this time where he suffers a severe illness. So we know a lot of times when we get an illness, it's burning off some old karma and making us ready for something new. And Pauline, the mother of the boys that he tutors, she's the one who actually nurses him slowly back to health. And it's around this time that he meets Felix Kaguski, the herb gardener, on the train. Others, we could tell a whole bunch of great stories about him, this really amazing individuality, who ends up introducing him to what Steiner refers to in his autobiography as Master M. We can speculate was perhaps Christian Rosenkreuz. So, yep, Steiner's going forward. He becomes the editor of various magazines and he gets his doctorate in philosophy. He publishes The Philosophy of Freedom. And in 1897, he moves to Berlin. This was a big change. And he's also looking to tutor young folks to make ends meet. And this is where he meets Anna Unecke. I'm sure I'm not saying it right, but he moves in with her, he helps with her children, and they get married. And it's a union that we really don't hear much about. He doesn't talk about it really in his autobiography at all. There's very little information about this. But I think if you look at the mystery dramas, there are some clues there. So yeah, around this time, he's really very much involved with the Workers' Institute. That's a part of the things that he's able to have in common with Anna. But then he becomes involved with Theosophy and starts lecturing on very, very occult themes. He becomes the general secretary of the German Theosophical Society. That's a big deal. And so, inevitably in 1903, I think it is, Steiner separates from Anna, who's, like kind of bewildered by this turn from liberal academia to Theosophy. She can't quite get on board with that. So they separate. And at this time, Steiner meets Nietzsche and lots of other writers and poets. And at one of his lectures, he meets Marie von Sievers, who asks him a very important question about how, what about bringing esoteric Christianity, the secrets to that to the world? So that opens up a lot for him. And in 1904, Steiner publishes How to Know Higher Worlds. So that's a big milestone. And he really continues to be active in politics. He's pressing for reforms in the German society and culture. And really, this is the beginning of his work around the threefold social order. And Marie von Sievers introduces him to the playwright Edward Scherer, and they start to do these intense artistic projects together. These it's the beginning of this idea of the mystery dramas. And at Whitsun in 1907, Steiner organizes the World Conference of the Theosophical Society. And so this was a really big deal. And he designs these apocalyptic seals and decorates the hall with all kinds of Rosicrucian symbolism, which is very new to the Theosophists at that time. It was quite a stir, actually. So then during this next phase is when he decides to write and direct the 4 mystery dramas, where he really talks about how people from the other side, our dearly departed, were giving him impulses to write these. So he's starting to bring things through from the spiritual world. And this gives birth to eurythmy and speech formation. It's a very exciting time. And this also is when he leaves the Theosophical Society over the whole Krishnamurti debacle with Bassett and Leadbeater. And then in 1909, Steiner publishes Occult Science. And then in 1911, his first wife, Anna, dies very, very mysteriously. They had never really gotten a divorce. They had just been separated, and she just dies. And yeah, I often think, like with his brother Gustav, that maybe, you know, she offered up her unused etheric substance so that Steiner would have more forces for his work. Interesting how these karmic relationships work. So yeah, in 1913, Steiner lays the foundation stone in the ground for the General Anthroposophical Society. So that's a big deal. And then work begins on the first Goetheanum. And on Christmas Eve in 1914, Marie Steiner marries Marie von Sievers. And Steiner really begins, you know, she organizes these lecture tours for him. He goes all over Europe. And he's really starting to speak on that question that Marie first asked him about bringing esoteric Christianity into focus. And he also, during this time, has a real personal revelation of the Christ. And so that fuels him to bring these lecture series of the Gospels, etc. And so I'm calling this next phase Anthroposophy as social action. Because during the war years, the esoteric schools kind of go underground. Steiner doesn't feel like it's good to do that because there was all kinds of opposition, you know, people trying to call people out for doing deep esoteric work. So he starts working with the people, and he's giving indications for the renewal of many areas of human activity. I've listed a bunch of them here, which we all know and so important. And so during this next time, which we can call recognizing and overcoming evil, Steiner founds the first Waldorf school. And soon after, the first anthroposophical clinic in Arlesheim was founded by Ita Wegman, who was greatly influenced by Steiner and became a close co-worker. And we just had her birthday, 2/22. So yeah. We know that Steiner oversees the establishment of the Christian community. And on that fateful New Year's Eve of 1922-23, so that's 100 years ago this year, the first Goetheanum is destroyed by fire. So again, this idea of this offering, this connection with the burning of Ephesus. And this really, it brings a new turning point, which is the Christmas conference and the refounding of the new General Anthroposophical Society, where Steiner unites the movement with the society. This idea of the movement being the spiritual forces behind the actual organization. Right? So he does this by uniting his karma with the karma of all the members. And that takes a toll. But Steiner begins right away to oversee the design of the second Goetheanum, and he refounds the esoteric lessons. And he starts to get those going, and then he brings forth this first class of the School of Spiritual Science. And as we know, even though the spiritual forces were pouring into him, he was doing sometimes 3-5 lectures a day. Steiner becomes ill. Yeah, but the spirit is working so strongly through him, and he does so much, especially around this core mission of karma and karma and reincarnation. And then, as we know, he died on March 30th in 1925. Crosses the threshold with Dr. Ita Wegman, his longtime karmic partner at his side. Marie Steiner was on a eurythmy tour, which she did not want to go to, but it had been planned. You know, it takes a lot of planning to do these things. And Steiner said, no, please, you have to go. You have to go. I'm in good hands here. You need to do this and get the word out and do our work in the world. So she was out there continuing the work. So yeah, I mean, that's just a very, very brief little synopsis of this amazing human being. I know you all have met him. So this is the part where you get to talk about that, right? Let's take all that we just heard into our thinking and then remember, how was it that Rudolf Steiner entered our lives? And I think about like how at this meeting of this, what he was calling the section for the spiritual striving of youth, which we now call the Esoteric Youth Circle, Steiner said, now tell each other about the paths that have led you to anthroposophy. So I'm making that our call for the breakout rooms. And I'm hoping that we can have a wonderful time to share. We'll do that for, I'll probably make it a 15-minute session, and then we'll come back and share all together as a group.
Okay.
There we go.
Yep.
Great question, Hazel. Thank you for asking.
Oh, well, that's Steiner's question. You know, that's the thing. I think it's really important that we not only share our biographies, but also it's so interesting to find out, you know, how did destiny...
How people, and now it's so fun. I haven't told that story in a long time. I really am grateful for the time to tell it.
Good, good. Yeah, so I feel like I've been on an adventure. How about you all? Anybody want to share? We have about 10 more minutes left.
It's quite...
I guess I would say study groups are such a great thing, because you asked me about my training and whether it was really anthroposophically based, and it was, but I gained so much from local anthroposophists like Anne Finucane, and at one point Roberta von Schulfgard and Joan Allman and Carol Petrash and Carolyn Hodnett offering study groups on different little books, you know, and just meeting people and diving in very, you know, very intentionally. And I think that's a real gift that, you know, members of this society can offer the communities.
Mm-hmm.
I think Leah and Mary had their hands up.
Yes. I thought it was interesting that all three in our group mentioned the card that we got in the mail that were part of the Anthroposophical Society. And I started by saying that I was a little bit overwhelmed with it because I'm not used to being, I mean, I've practiced a lot of different spiritual paths, but I've always refrained from becoming that religion or that spiritual. So then when I got the thing in the mail, it was kind of a little bit shocking actually to be a member. And then we were talking about how we all thought about how it said on the back you had to mail it in if you die, so that it was a very serious thing, and how that's part of anthroposophy and the social system, you know, that we're all part of the Rosicrucian line, and we've all met, how precariously we kind of met each other. And then the last thought was, well, I wonder if they're collecting our names as still members when we die so they can read to us. And we were actually wondering if that's the case, if actually your name is kept as a member even after you die.
Beautiful thought. Yeah, I know, you know, in the magazine that will be at the back there, you'll see the autobiographies of some folks in the list of names. So that's, I always look at that and do a little meditation for them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you. Mary, you want to share?
Yeah, well, I was in Leah's group, and the other thing we discovered is, well, the third member of our group was born in Basel, and the Goetheanum was part of her landscape, and both Leah and I have also visited the Goetheanum, so we had that common experience. And I started out as a Waldorf parent. That was my introduction. But one thought I had, the other member was talking about her burial wishes that her family will carry out. And I've been involved with the home funeral with my own parents, and they knew nothing about that, but it was out of my, involvement with the anthroposophical impulses and people and Ernst Katz. And anyway, the thought occurred to me, if an anthroposophical person has family members who are not, but they have these wishes for a home funeral, I don't know, this is something that I'm thinking about a lot, whether I want to ask them to do something which could be difficult at a difficult time if it's not something that they're already understanding and on board. I mean, both of my daughters are more than happy to try to do whatever I ask, but I'm wondering if that's asking too much. So anyway, I'll just put that question out there, and maybe I'll get some feedback at some point.
Lark, you were.
Well, if you want feedback, if that's appropriate, I'll happily give some. That both of my parents, neither of my parents were anthropops, but they both had vigil, the 3-day vigil, and I made a space in my home. I also was really active in the death community here in the Washington, D.C. area. So we had already done it many times, and my daughters had attended, and my son as well, but many of the funerals, we had a loss of 3 young people, and then many older friends. So they've been involved periphically, how do you say it? Anyway, they've been involved, but they are definitely neither members of Christian community. It's the old get us, both their parents are, solidly in Steiner, and they are like this. They're 3 Waldorf lifers, pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. And that's fine. They're doing their own thing till they're 35 or maybe 45 or maybe 55. But meanwhile, I wrote out all of my wishes. Christian community actually has an actual form for it, and stuck it in my death file. And I know that at least for my husband, if he goes first, then of course, we're going to do that. He used to make all the coffins for everybody. He's a woodworker and does beautiful anthroposophical type design. So I think if you make your wishes known and say that when that time comes, which it will, this is what I would like to have done, and include the 3-day vigil. And with dry ice, it's no big deal. And it's important because you can really, not only is it important for you etherically, but it's also important for people who are visible. When Carolyn Hodnett died, for example, she had gone through a very rough time in the early part of her life, and mid part of her life. Early part was fine, and the middle part was very, very difficult. And her face literally transformed during that 3-day vigil. And the morning, early in the morning, this was 3 o'clock, Sheila Johns was there, Bruce and I, and the 3 of us were sitting there, and Sheila was playing the lyre. Bruce was probably praying or meditating, and I was just looking at the beauty of the flowers, because Carolyn, said that these flowers had to be done by Mary Brower, and that there was the night flower and day flower, and the candles. We had these large, big column candles next to each of them, and the day flowers, the flower were starting to die, and the pillar itself had completely unfolded into the shape of a rose. It was amazing. Meanwhile, when we worked with her body, I had put a rose by her chest, right by her heart, and all of the others were tightly wound, because there's dry ice, and all of the others were tightly round, but the one that was right by her started to open up right by her heart at 3 a.m. And then, I looked at the day roses, looked down at her, and her face was absolutely radiant. And the night flowers, which were the blues and the purples and the whites, were over on the far right, and that pillar was just solid. So when her daughter came in, who had been in Italy and was upset that she wasn't, didn't come in but 2 weeks before her mom died, she was upset with her mom. I said, I want you to, Catherine, I want you to, when you walk in, because I was serving for the funeral too, I said, I want you to look at your mom's face, look at the rose by her heart, and look at the difference in the candles themselves, and tell me that you don't think that this was something special. And she went in and she looked at her mom's face, which was radiant. She saw the rose by her heart, which was fully opened. And she saw the rose candle that had, come out like this. And then this solid, and she just came back to me and just gave me a big hug afterwards, even in my vestments, which you normally don't do. But, and she said, just thank you, thank you, thank you. So yes, I think it has a powerful effect on the others. You just have to make your wishes known. And Carolyn made all of her wishes known as to who was going to attend to the body, who was going to tend to the flowers.
It's so interesting to have that, you bring that in, Mary, and thank you, Lark, for that beautiful description. This question of how did you meet Rudolf Steiner, and then here you bringing this question of how do you meet him on the other side almost, it's like we've gone on quite a journey with that. So very interesting. And of course, we want to try to make our meeting with Anthroposophy practical. So that's a beautiful way to do that. We have a couple more minutes. Does anybody else want to share of their experience?
Kimberly?
Yeah, I'll fill a little space. It was interesting that the gateway that we met Anthroposophy is not necessarily where our focus and interests are in Anthroposophy now. Like new doors are open. I think a lot of this with COVID too, where we're seeing different ways that we can enter in that we never thought of when we first met Anthroposophy, or would have, of course, even known about. So I thought that was interesting.
There's so many gifts, and we can use them in the different phases that we are in our own lives, right? Anybody else?
I love this question. And I think the thing that I was really struck by this time is that every time this question is asked and you get to share in a group, there's something we have in common. There's always some common ground, and it's a location or interests or one of the outgrowths in the initiative, but it just, even in this world over computer screens, seeing each other, feeling truly connected through this question it's really just a beautiful gift. So thank you for bringing that.
Well, friends, thank you so much. This is just, it's a beautiful contemplation to think about people's birth and death days. And I think it's an important way that connects us all together, but also, what can we feel out in the world right now? Are these individualities present as we speak? Can we reach out to them with our soul forces now to say, how we can come together and continue the work? So anniversaries are important milestones to stand on, but what's the next step going to be? That's always my question. So next week, we will start our journey into Lent. And so Nancy's going to tell us what we need for that. And then also you can always go to the Padlet and we'll put, little notices in there about supplies and stuff that you might need. So that's a good
Right. We'll need paper, scissors, 2 colors of crayon or some marker pencil and tape. There are all sorts of clever ways to put paper together without tape, but we're going to use tape. It's easy. We're modern people. Let's, we'll be perfunctory with tape. So that's what you'll need next week. And we decided not to have any artistic activity because we wanted the words to flow today. We knew we were in for a wellspring of conversation. So we wanted to give it all the time we could.
Beautiful. Yeah, the creative work of speech, right? And communication and biography. Thank you all. We'll see you next time. Please. Yeah, and so you can start celebrating his birthday now, right? And go through Sunday.
Ooh, yeah.
Does that include Rocky Road ice cream?
Of course.
Yes.
I should hope so. And then there's Punch Key Day coming up Tuesday.
There we go. Yeah.
What's the significance of Rocky Road ice cream in case I go buy some?
I don't know. Is it just a rocky road life? Or is there some reason, Jerome, that you like Rocky Road?
It's just really good. And I want to thank, it's just my favorite. And I just
There you
really
go.
want to thank Hazel for bringing the element of just like a birthday party into the group or discussions, because we're serious people and it's a serious topic, but to put in the context of a birthday, I got really excited, like sort of going to a birthday party. And I even had a dream last night, like a birthday party with other people, through Camp Hill, but it brought some levity and a little celebration and, and a fun aspect to it. I appreciate that.
Well, now we know what to bring to your birthday party, Jerome. So
Rocky Road.
March 11th, if anybody.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll start
Coming up.
preparing. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, so get ready and yeah, Carnival coming up too, right? So
Make a wish.
make a wish. Please.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good week.